Welcome to the Hidden Chest, a spoiler-free showcase of overlooked and/or underrated games. And today, we'll be venturing into the eldritch forests of Darkwood, a top-down horror game where everything is objectively terrible. Well, I mean, in universe, everything is terrible. The game itself is actually pretty fantastic. In a spending the night hiding in a corner terrified that you'll be beaten to a bloody pulp by tree people kind of way. I'm just gonna put it out there, this game is a grim compilation of existential terror, extreme stress, and horrifying imagery. Mixed with time and resource management. You have a base of operations, and from it each day you must venture out to gather supplies and further the story, only to crawl back to your home at night using the meager supplies you gathered to make weapons, medicine, and barricades, so that maybe you'll actually have a chance to survive. It's pretty intense. I remember reading a Reddit AMA a while back where the developers of this game said they wanted to make a horror game that people who are too scared of horror games can play. And I can see where they're coming from. The top-down perspective really does lighten the load, and the game doesn't have any jump scares. At least, none in the traditional sense. But I gotta say, this game is still terrifying. This fear of the unknown, the almost Lovecraftian terror that these woods emit, the depths of human depravity and grotesque imagery are a kind of horror that isn't about jump scaring you by screeching loud noises in your face. It's about staying with you, keeping you terrified of the world around you and what's looming in the dark, and making you grimly contemplate what you witnessed days after you turn the game off for the last time. The only game I can think of that comes even close to Darkwood's brand of hellish oppressive atmosphere is Silent Hill. The story being told is chilling. Like many great pieces of art, show don't tell is a key tenet of this game's philosophy. Knickknacks, photographs, and letters, the buildings and landscapes around you. It's all a beautifully macabre collection of clues and crushed lives. And as for the lives that haven't been snuffed, it's rarely so straightforward. In this game, it's often up to you to put the pieces together. In general, the experience is obviously beautiful, from the people to the environments. It's so morbidly detailed with its rural, near post-apocalyptic, pagan, psychedelic hellscape. You'll just have to see it for yourself, which you have now and will continue to do so for the rest of the video. Oh, and the music. Dear God, the music. It's like somebody scientifically engineered a soundtrack to make you as viscerally uncomfortable as possible. Everything is just so perfect in how awful it is. But when the game wants to give you a glimmer of sanity, it can do that as well. The crescendo for when the horrible nights come to an end, what can I say? It's beautiful. This game does have a more concrete story apart from the stories of the world around you. The main plotline you follow about escaping this godforsaken place branches into multiple directions, not dissimilar to a tree. This is very on brand. Everything you do has some effect on what happens later, be it small or game-alteringly huge. On top of this, if you want to experience all the story beats this game has to offer, multiple go-arounds aren't actually as repetitive as you'd think. This world is somewhat randomly generated for each playthrough, not to mention situations vastly differ depending on how you play it mechanically. Mix this with the branching plotline and things stay astonishingly fresh. Like one of those pine things you hang up in your car. Oh wait, that's another tree. Boom, thematic cohesion. Of course you can defend yourself. Under normal circumstances, I'd say that these controls are rock solid, but in this specific instance, I'd think it'd be more accurate to say that they're quebracho solid. Quebracho being, of course, according to wooddatabase.com, the most solid wood that exists. You know what, these tree references just stop being funny. Combat is slow and methodical. You hold down one button to hold out your weapon, and click another one to use it. Simple and efficient. There's also a quicker and weaker single button attack for melee weapons if you're desperate. Either way, you'll need to wait for the enemy's guard to go down before you strike. Otherwise, you guarantee getting a haymaker straight in the face. Or worse. Not to mention that you have a stamina meter, so running away or spamming by bashing everyone's brain in with a shovel isn't always the best course of action. Of course, in some instances, running away is absolutely the best course of action. Know when to fight your battles, I guess. There are guns, Molotovs, and the like, but like with others in the genre, they're exceptionally rare and valuable. For example, to make a Molotov, you either need alcohol, which is extremely important for medicine, or gasoline, which is extremely important so you don't die at night. Both of these recipes also require rags, which are important for making bandages. Meanwhile, crafting guns is extremely expensive and ammo can only be found out in the wild. Even melee weapons ain't cheap, considering you can upgrade them and they break after a while, so you need to save up on repair materials. But hey, upgrades. You can also, do something like that to yourself. You can collect mushrooms and other disgusting spawns of the forest and inject them directly into your bloodstream, gaining access to new skills, like the ability to eat wood to heal, or spew acid blood when you've been injured, or to rip out a chunk of your own flesh and mark your position on the map with it. Yay? But for each tier of ability you gain, you must also lose something in turn, like having a smaller field of vision after being hit, or being more vulnerable to poison. Oh yeah, on a completely unrelated or semi-related note, did I mention that you have a field of vision? You've probably already noticed at this point, but you can only see things where your character is facing, which is great if you like to be rushed in the bumhole. The thing about this game is that, well, I think the loading screen says it best. You are playing a challenging and unforgiving game. You will not be led by the hand. Respect the woods, be patient, focus. This game does have a tutorial, and it does a great job of teaching you what you need to know, but other than that, some things aren't so clear. You'll figure out most of it by playing the game, but there are some things I didn't figure out until later that would have really helped me early on. I'll go ahead and list them here if you want to know what I had issues figuring out. But speaking of the game being unforgiving, it is that, but it also kind of isn't. The game is difficult, death looms around every corner, and if you aren't prepared, you won't last very long. But also the penalty for death seems a bit, way too lenient. Like, if you die during the day, all that happens is that you need to go to your own corpse and pick up some of your items. You don't even lose any. 95% of the time, this is absolutely no problem. At night, meanwhile, if you survive the ordeal, you get a decent chunk of this game's version of currency. The only penalty for dying at night is, not getting that money, which once again isn't much of a problem. There's a reason that the developers themselves have said that the hard and nightmare modes were the way this game was originally meant to be played. Heck, nightmare mode was the only way this game could be played for most of its life on early access. But the thing with those two modes is that they may go too far in the other direction. Nightmare is the permadeath mode. If you die, that's it. You gotta start over. Hard mode is the same, but you have 5 lives. And that level of challenge might just be too much for people. There isn't really a difficulty where death matters, but you don't have the threat of permadeath looming over you the whole time, which I think is kind of a problem. So what's my take? Well, honestly, after weighing all the options, I think hard mode is the optimal experience. It makes death terrifying and everything becomes much more intense because of it. And the game isn't completely merciless. There is a checkpoint around halfway through the story, so if you game over past that point, you respawn there. And there's even a rare item you can find that grants you an extra life. I won't tell you what it is, but keep in mind that it's extremely gross and disturbing and you'd think you shouldn't eat it, but just do it anyways. Oh, and it isn't a mushroom. Even with these helpful features, however, you still lose hours of progress if you fail, so I'd say assess your skill level and pick hard or normal based on that. So, that's where I stand. On one hand, difficulty swerves between death not meaning enough to death maybe meaning way too much, and some of the mechanics could have been explained a bit better. On the other hand, this is one of the best horror games ever made. It's terrifying, the gameplay and mechanics are fun and engaging, and the world it creates is unforgettable. Frankly, if you're a horror fan, you'd be doing yourself a massive disservice not buying this. And if you aren't a horror fan, thank you for watching this video, and also, this might just be the perfect gateway to the genre. Like I said, there are no jump scares, and the top-down camera makes things much more manageable. Oh, and two more things before I'm done. When starting a save file, turn off Indiegogo content. The description says the stuff is immersion breaking, and you really should heed that warning. Secondly, there's a trailer out there for this game, and it's one of the best I've ever seen. The visuals, the pacing, the music, it's borderline a masterpiece. If you aren't convinced about buying this game, watch it, and you might just change your mind. On the other hand, if you are considering getting this game, don't watch it. It gives away a lot of reveals and scares. Believe it or not, I've only shared a teensy fraction of what this game throws at you. I'll always remember the first time I ran into a banshee, or when I found the and then I brutally murdered a giant mutant. And if I had saw this trailer beforehand, it would have dampened those experiences. So, be careful about that. You can buy this game on basically any of the relevant current consoles. While the game was clearly designed for mouse and keyboard play, it works pretty well with a controller too, so go crazy. Like slather yourself in sticks and mud and try to bludgeon strangers to death crazy. But for buying video games,